So hi everybody, my name is Corey Lawrence. Thank you for joining us. I'm coming to you here live at WeWork in downtown Washington, DC. I am one of the organizers of DC Startup Week and also the founder of IRL Agency. DC Startup Week is a year-round organization, but we have our culminating event here. It's our 5-day conference that happens every September, focused on building the startup community. We want to give a quick shout out to our title sponsors, Next, Insperity, WIS, and Technology Rivers. Thank you so much for making this week possible. If you have any questions for our panelists here throughout the talk, please put in all caps question at the start of your chat, so we'll make sure not to miss any of your fantastic questions. We are so excited to have Jacqui Wolinsky moderating this discussion on growth through advertising. Jacqui currently is the Director of Federal and National Sales for WTOP and Federal News Network, and we are proud to partner with WTOP this year. Please join me in welcoming Jacqui and our panelists to the DC Startup Week stage.
Well, thank you, Corey. Today's panel is named Growth Through Advertising. I put a lot of thought into, should we change the name unofficially? And so I started writing down, advertising is only one part of what we're going to talk about today. Should we change the name to Growth Through Marketing? Should we change the name to Growth Through Problem Solving? Should we change the name to ultimately what marketing, advertising, problem solving, and all of these things really mean? Growth through attention grabbing. So my focus here today is to grab your attention, to help you grab others' attention, and to have our panelists help you understand how they currently and in the past have, for their own business or other businesses, grabbed the attention of their potential consumer, delivered a message, and got them to act on the message. And what I would default to is growth through capitalism, community through capitalism. In the world that we live in today, in the United States of America, and the capitalistic culture that we have, grabbing somebody's attention, turning that attention to you, your business, and how you can help them is what we are all about. And that, at the essence, is what a startup is doing to grow. I'm joined by 4 fantastic panelists. First, Patrick Fingles, co-owner and CEO of New Look Home Design. Next, Nick Damoulakis, the president of Orases. We have Heather Mahoney, principal from Haute House Agency, and Jacqui Hannigan, the executive director from RP3 Agency. I want to jump right in because each of you represent a different piece of marketing. I want to start with Patrick because Patrick, many people that are watching and listening to us today have probably heard your voice before. You're the face and voice of the company New Look Home, and you've done a great job in branding and creating an image to what New Look is. So I want to start off by talking, when you started New Look and you put yourself in the position to be out there and start acquiring new customers, what thoughts went through your mind as it related to how you've gotten to this place that everybody now associates you, your voice, your personality with New Look and those messages you deliver? Patrick?
All right, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I apologize in advance for my voice and for this mug if you've been hearing it on the radio. But anyway, you know, it's funny. I saw an infographic on LinkedIn the other day, and it showed 2 triangles. One triangle was kind of bottom to top, and it showed marketing in the top half and sales in the bottom. Another triangle was flipped on its side, and it had marketing on half the triangle and sales on the half the triangle, meaning that when you think about the lead funnel and the lead flow, I think people think of marketing and then they think of sales. So marketing's job is to generate an inquiry, nurture a prospect, nurture a lead. Sales job is to bring it across the finish line. Sales owns revenue, typically marketing owns KPIs, right? Well, that philosophy is now being flipped on its side, and it's saying we need marketing to stay all the way through the point of revenue. We want marketing to stay part of the entire customer journey, not just to get the customer kind of in the door and then the responsibility falls on sales to close it. And organically for me, that's always been present. The reason I bring that up is because I don't consider myself a marketer. I consider myself a salesperson. And the thing that I think makes me a good salesperson is, you know, kind of a social awareness or a psychology, right? Because we're all human beings and we're all interacting, right? So for me, you know, the question is why did I want to be the face of the advertising? Well, before we started doing any real advertising, broadcast media, you know, print and all these kind of big advertisements where we had to put messaging out into the space, there was a story that I was telling in the house. It was a selling process. It was, why are you going to use our products? Why are you going to use our service? And when we started marketing, I kind of, in my mind, couldn't kind of de-hook the two. I couldn't separate them and say, well, how are we going to generate leads? To me, it was using the same salesmanship. It was really the same story. Why are you going to use our products? Why are you going to hire our services? So I was so used to delivering that message in a small organization as being the person that was trying to bring the customer across the finish line that I kind of took those same messages. You know, I took those same messages to the airwaves. So I think the reason I did it is because the reason that we sold at the time surely wasn't because of marketing, because we really didn't do any marketing. The reason we sold at the time was because what we were saying at the table, what we were saying to the homeowner. And we were articulating that. So the natural conclusion for me to be able to generate a lead was to articulate what we knew worked for us. So I just say, give me 60 seconds on the airways and I'm gonna do a quick little sales pitch. And you know, those were our first advertisements. Now, again, years later, it's been 17 years, and you're kind of flipping this on its side and you're saying, no, marketing and sales are really hooked. They both own revenue. And they both carried that torch across the finish line. And I think organically, we had figured that out early because I was born from sales and then I was handed the responsibility of marketing.
So I want to come back to that later, but actually you make a great point on taking that story and the story selling, as I like to call it, of what you're saying to your customer and amplifying it. And that, from a startup standpoint, for sure, you have to know what your story is to tell a potential customer so that they know why to buy from you, what problem you solve. It's a natural progression to come to Jacqui from here, because Jacqui works with companies after they've determined what that story is and they've taken it as far as they can from an organic nature and they start bringing it to the media world. You have to test a campaign and say, where do we start from a standpoint of, now that we're looking to reach beyond our network, now that we're looking to reach beyond connections that can be made on behalf of us or through other people we know, and we're going to truly generate new leads and business from the external community, how do we start testing that? So Jacqui, Patrick had his message. The message had been perfected in the living room of the customers he had gotten to already. He was looking to branch out and get bigger. Where do you recommend that people start testing that message, start testing that campaign, start making choices about actually spending money to get that message into the community?
Right, thanks. Yeah, so first thing before I decide I would recommend what that test would be is I would like to know, how do you plan to measure the success? What is the story you are trying to tell? Who are you trying to tell it to? And at the end of the day, if you run that test, what does success look like to you? So what are those aspirational goals? And then collaborate on what those measurements of the objectives should be. So the objectives then dictate your audience, what you want that audience to do, what you're trying to tell them. Are you trying to get them to a website? Are you trying to get them to fill out a lead form? All of those elements play into how you form that test. And from there, we look at all kinds of, besides what those objectives are, unfortunately and fortunately, what is your budget? How much can you do? What is the most you can do with the budget that you have in order to learn the most that you can so that you have actionable metrics to move forward with? So everything you do, you learn from. From there, depending on all of those elements, it could be, we get into channels. What is that channel mix? And really the PESO model comes into play, which is paid, earned, shared, and owned. And the paid part is complementary to all of those. And you need to consider all of those channels and where your audiences are, and then form that test. I'll wait to get into what that test might be specifically, because I don't know if you want to hear it right now.
We'll come back to you, because you mentioned lots of people that are driving folks to websites. And obviously the natural consumer journey today goes through a website, so it's a natural introduction to Nick and Orases. Nick, I've seen some of the sites and things that Orases have created for really impressive looking ways that folks can interact with the companies that you represent on those websites. How, as a company that is providing that infrastructure and backbone, how do you balance the aspect of, hey, if we build it, they will come, versus you're out there, people out there promoting, come to our site, and what it should do when they get to the site? What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
That's a great question. I wish I had a really good answer here. It's like trial and error. You know, the reality is, even from the big Fortune 500s to startups, you got to go with your gut. You got to have some research. You got to go for it. If you're just following what everybody else is doing, the competitors, and you're just status quo, you're not going to get anywhere. So a lot of our clients, you know, we'll sit down, we'll understand the customer journey mapping. For those who don't know what that is Google customer journey or customer journey mapping. You know, it's taking the customer from the beginning all the way through the process and seeing how you interact with them. That's a really powerful mechanism. The other thing that we do, I think Patrick was saying it earlier, you got marketing over here, and then you got your salespeople, and then operations. When you're coming up with ideas, bring the whole company together. Do not just bring marketing in and say, hey, we're going to do this because I feel like it's right to do. Bring everyone together and brainstorm as a group. Everybody has different perspectives on what the best way to sell is, what you're selling, how you're dealing with clients. Different people are talking to different clients at different points of a project and understanding different pain points. Being able to get the feedback from your entire team is necessary for success. And that allows us to then create these great experiences online.
You know, when Nick brings up the team, it's a natural piece. Heather, I want to bring the PR question to you. Oftentimes when people think about PR, they're thinking about pitching stories and earning media opportunities and placements, as Jacqui was talking about. There's a massive value to the people that work for your company and the PR piece that they can bring in to helping you get your message out in the community. I'll expand the question, but from the initial stage that we're talking about, Heather, can you bring in what the role PR plays at the beginning stages for a startup?
Sure. So Nick's absolutely right. I think that marketing, sales, PR, operations should all be integrated together. Like he said, that we're all speaking to clients at different stages. And I think I always say that the #1 focus should be consistency. So brand recognition is half the battle, right? The money will come later, but you have to have those tight campaigns, like Jacqui said, that you could funnel everything down and have the right messaging and target the correct audiences. But that doesn't mean anything if your campaign, your product, your social channels, your website, even your font family in a brand kit aren't consistent. So brand recognition is again, more than half the battle, because people aren't going to click through the ads. They're not going to be able to communicate your message. They're not going to know what your message is if it's not communicated correctly. So that's where professionals like myself in the PR, media management type of realm come in to help craft the best story that you want to tell, whether it be to press or simply forward facing to the public, and then apply that to advertising campaigns for the best visibility. So it's really tightening that up. And again, making it consistent so that you're ahead of the curve, whatever that may be, whether it's your return on your investment for digital campaigns, or, you know, it's just in the wording and messaging on your website too, as far as your press pitches, because people come back to that. So any press release that goes out, they're going to come back to your website. Any ad that goes out, they're going to come back to your website. They're going to check your social channels. I mean, digital advertising has completely changed the scope of marketing as a whole, and really we're kind of all in that gray area. I think that people that aren't in our industry kind of don't know what we do because they don't know if you're PR, you're marketing, you're advertising, like who do I hire? Do I go to an all-encompassing type of agency, or do I go to, you know, somebody that has more of a niche in that market? So I think it's really an all-inclusive team effort, just tightening that up. And then when you do put your money into your advertising campaign, it's then coming back for your return on investment. So it's identifying that first phase group and then retargeting them with your ads and or what their behaviors are, whether it's through a lead page advertising campaign and where they're landing on your website too.
So I think we've all said it in a variety of different ways, which is, let's talk about money. I'm going to come back to you, Patrick. Let's talk about money. The biggest thing we want to talk about money is, as a person who started the business 17 years into it, when do you determine the need or the want or the willingness to pull that wallet out of the pocket and actually spend money versus bootstrapping it and saying, I'm a startup and I'm looking to get everything that I can and for free, or use all my network. I've exhausted all that. I'm ready to spend money. How does that process go, and what does that look like?
It's really funny you say this. I was on a sales training, a TV station. I'll leave nameless, but a TV station that we were on said, "Hey, will you come on our sales team meeting and talk to our sales team about how they can get more clients to do what you're doing on television, because people are coming on and they're coming right back off. They're coming on, they're not getting the ROI, and they're coming right back off." And, I think that they were really doing a really good job. Jacqui had talked about really starting with, what are your goals? So I think as a business owner, here's the problem. It's a perpetual problem, because most businesses are grassroots. The terrible thing about grassroots advertising is it's super cheap. So you start and you build your business, right? And we're all selling something. There's a product, there's a value. You might be selling time, you might be selling a product, you might be selling a service, it's whatever, right? So what happens is you start selling your product and you're making a net flow through, you're making an income, and you get to a place of profitability. But that profitability was based on very little ad spend. It was based on grassroots advertising, which has ROIs of 2,000 and 3,000. I mean, there's almost no expense. So then you say, well, I'm going to go start television, which has an ROI of 350%. So where does the money come from? So I was working with this group of TV, advertising sales agents, and they said, well, we typically go in, we figure out how much budget they have, we make sure that we don't take their budget unless we know we're going to be able to deliver the frequency, and we start with their lead goals. But what you never do is you never say, okay, well, how much money do you make on that? Do we need to do a product price increase? So the answer for us was beautifully simple, and this is the advice I give to people. Start advertising when you feel that you can increase your selling price. Because scaling from grassroots is very challenging. Now, if you're super profitable and you're willing to give some of your money back to scale, well then sure, you can do that. But 75% of the time, that's not the case. I want to keep making the net income that we're currently making. I just want a whole lot more of it. We sold $100,000 in product. I made $10,000 in profit. I'd like to sell $200,000 in product and make $20,000 in profit. My ad spend on the $100,000 was zero. My ad spend on the $200,000 is going to be 30 grand. Well, the math doesn't work. So you need to sell $230,000 worth of product to now make $20,000 and, charge for your advertising. So that's really, when you get your selling system down, you got grassroots and you're ready to scale, you need to determine whether you're going to reinvest profits or whether you're going to increase your price point and bring more net income through. Because I promise, as you layer all these things in, it will increase volume, but it doesn't necessarily get more efficient. Typically, it goes the other direction and it's less efficient. Our ROIs in the early days were so much higher than they are now. So that drives price point, which is a challenging place because you don't want to price yourself out of the market. So, you have to figure that out.
Patrick, you brought up the magic word. I see some of the folks who've introduced themselves that are in the audience. Scale is the magic word for anybody who also uses startup to classify their business. And what happens all the time when you're at these startup events is people have some sort of website that they're looking to scale and utilize digital means to make that happen. I want to go to Nick on the side of expense, where Patrick was investing in advertising to drive sales. People are investing with you, Nick, in how complex or not complex to make their website. What type of conversation are you having with these startup companies into what the investment should be in their website infrastructure based off of how they can do what Patrick said and scale their business from that perspective?
Yeah, it's really, it's all over the board. It's all over the board, from startup to a single entrepreneur to husband and wife starting, to an actual person taking an investment and building something out. It's all over the board. But, you know, one of the lessons that I probably learned and we really followed, especially in our first, probably first decade of being in business, was making sure you do your best job on controlling the narrative. Controlling the narrative. If you're a startup and you don't have much money to invest with big firms, or you're trying to do your marketing and advertising or PR internally, you need to constantly be out there, seeing what your competitors are saying about themselves, how people are reacting to that, and then Googling your company and making sure that it's in good light out there. Controlling the narrative. Today, you know, you got everything from Glassdoor to Facebook, Twitter, every social media outlet out there. And sometimes you don't even know what people are saying about your product, your people, your leadership, your culture. You have no clue. You really, I like to start on making sure that you understand that very, very well. And as much as you can, with ethics, you know, control that narrative. Go out there and place certain ads wherever there's a on your digital footprint, wherever your competitors are, you better be there. And that's why I love PR. I think PR is huge in making that happen, because no one cares what you say about your product. No one cares what you say on your website about what you're doing. What they're doing now, and I'm sure all of you on here, when you go to a restaurant, you know, you get a review from the restaurant, or you get a review of a product from Amazon before you buy it. Based on that, you buy. Well, people's brains are changing to that. So by controlling the narrative out there, you're basically setting yourself up for early success.
And Heather, I know you want to comment on the PR piece of this. One thing that these startup companies need to realize is that when you go from that grassroots to a significantly larger exposure, the narrative becomes that much harder to control, because now you've opened yourself up from your community to every community. What advice do you have as it transitions from, hey, it's my inner circle that knows about my business, to I'm putting myself out there and I'm subject to those reviews. I'm subject to people saying things about me on the internet, or posting or commenting to things that I've put myself out there. I'm vulnerable. How do I deal with that?
Yeah, so Nick is absolutely right to control the narrative. I think number one is to be prepared, right? Be ahead of the curve, whether just expect that the unexpected is going to happen, because it will, right? So first, like he said, align with your competitor, and then differentiate yourself. So you want, that's again, coming back to that consistent brand recognition, you want a strong brand that gives you a clean cut, blueprint for not only where you are, but where you want to be. Now, does this mean that you need to have, you know, a fancy corporate, you know, business plan that is your Bible that you go by? No, absolutely not. Throw it out the window. That's never going to work. It's your business is ever evolving. Things that are again unexpected are going to happen, and you need to make sure that you and your team are ready to be in front of it before it does. So again, the World Wide Web, right? Now we have so many different competition that we could normally probably wouldn't have, especially when print advertising was a thing. So I think that it's just the battle of having that strong campaign, those strong brand words, a strong mission statement, and hold true to that. You want a brand that people trust. You want something that is going to resonate with them. I usually say people over profits first, and then the profits will come. So always make sure that you're taking care of your customer first, and then your brand will take care of itself. So I think that really helps with the clout of your business too, and crafting that story. I also like to position myself, for instance, in the position, well, not just myself, my business, but also my clients, in putting that optional space for them to have clout in advance of a press release. So getting the quotes in an article where they're just being, maybe the whole article isn't about them, but they're being interviewed, and one quote out of it is on there. So then now they can put that out, and your SEO continues to fill in, that you become a master of this particular subject and or product, whatever it may be.
You know, an interesting part, Jacqui was ready to answer the question about how do you understand your conversion rates and if the campaign was successful, and we turned this into the money section. I'm going to come to Jacqui in terms of when we start talking about how do we take those conversions, and Patrick's starting off of this conversation, building into your profit margins and your revenue needed to pay for the advertising. How do you make sure that the advertising is paying off in the way that Patrick gave us the number portion of it? How do you track that, and what mechanisms can you put in place to do so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the technology has certainly come a long way. You know, it tracking, while the digital landscape has really evolved, this part is still really hasn't changed in the last 25 years. You know, in 95, it was, you know, Amazon figuring out how to gauge interest in people who might want to buy a book online, because it's never been done before, right? It was a CTR, that, you know, and as much volume and mindset. Who are the people that you are presenting your message to? So it could be everything from assigning a value to that click through, along with, so, you know, 1,000 click throughs, how much is each one of those click rates worth to you, down to, if you are selling a product, what value you're going to assign to that lead, and then it's the breakdown of that measure, that funnel, right? So click to interest, to filling out a lead form, to conversion, buying, etc. So you can use everything from the Google platform. You can track it manually. There are many platforms out there that you can serve from in the digital realm. You know, that is another thing that hasn't changed with digital. It's, you know, show me the measurement, show me the money. Is very different from, and a little easier to do than your mass media. So you can track down to whatever you're willing to tag on your website or to include in your CRM system. You can track it all the way down to that, and to the nurturing process too. What is that LTV? Attach it from the very beginning, from that impression. You can track it all the way through. And so what's important to you?
On the chat box, we have somebody that wrote in talking about customer service. I want to go to Patrick. Customer service puts you in a position where if it's really good, people can become fans. If it's not so good, it can be a negative. Let's talk about, once now we've put ourselves out there, and we've put our company in a place where we're advertising, more people know about us. There's a group of people that are not our inner circle that now know about us. We're communicating with the world and serving customers. How do you manage the narrative of feedback of the customer service that your employees or your product has delivered to the community that has bought from you?
Hey, you know, it's funny. I spoke at the Better Business Bureau, for the Better Business Bureau once, and I was talking about a review. I remember our very first negative Better Business Bureau review. I remember, right? And I remember I was giving this speech and for the BBB, and I said, I remember that review, and I said, and it just was like a knife in my side. And I said, we actually called the Better Business Bureau and explained our case, that we actually weren't wrong, and we got them to remove the review. Now, by the time I'm giving this speech, we had a couple more bad ones that had come through. And it was that point that I learned, and in my speech, I told them the best, really, some of the best reviews that you get are the bad ones. And I know that sounds like cliche, but it's those reviews that you use. I mean, if nobody gives you, I mean, look, some reviews are not constructive and others are constructive. Love your products, love your company, your customer service, took too long to get somebody on the phone, my installation, my products were delayed. Right? But it's the constructive feedback that really guides you as a business owner to understand what your consumers are asking for. I mean, you can do focus groups and you can look at your competition. I mean, all that's great too. But direct feedback from your users, right, or your customer base is the best feedback you can get. So look, I mean, there's tons of successful companies that have been totally put out of business because they just couldn't control their customer service. I think they tried, maybe they scaled too fast, and we've had points of really good customer service and points of bad ones. I mean, we've had some really great experiences and we have some bad experiences. I mean, I think all you can do with it is you need to prevent it from going out of control, even if that means downsizing. So as you start to come up, you need to have a tolerance for feedback. You need to understand how to use that feedback and not run from it. You know, we had the review taken down because we were looking at it as black and white. Did we do something wrong or did we do something right? The fact is perception is reality. We've all heard that. In that customer's mindset, he perceived a bad experience, whether on our side, did we deliver one? So, you know, I think that, you know, as business owners, as you scale up, when those reviews come through, it's the appropriate response to them, right? And it's determining, are these getting out of hand? Do we have major internal issues to where we need to scale back? Because this isn't the quality of product or service that we want to bring to market. Then you have to determine when you're going to slow down, or when you're going to use that feedback as a go-forward plan. And that's what drives your responses. You know, I'm sure Nick will say, you know, or Heather will say, you know, make sure you respond to those negative reviews and make sure you put some behind there. But when you really look at the reviews and you understand the problem, some of the best responses are really like, hey, you're not the first person to complain about this. This is an issue that we're evaluating intensely. You know, we're going to get this solved for our customers moving forward. We're sorry you had this experience and we'll use your feedback to make sure future customers don't. Like when you take it and it's real and it's not like just kind of that political response, right? And it's actually, no, we do take negative reviews and that bad customer or, you know, imperfect customer feedback to heart. First of all, it drives your business. So, you know, when you every year we put together a business plan, and one of the questions that we ask every leader is, where do we need to do a better job as an organization? Most of that comes from imperfect customer service experiences.
Heather, I'll have you weigh in here. Patrick brought up your name. Let's hear your thoughts.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, no, I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, that's part of the getting ahead of the curve, right? So I think that and I usually say this, is that the future of PR lies in impactful content creation. So you're listening to your audience and whom their opinions are, but then you also want to include well-rounded campaigns, engagement with your clients, a strong brand narrative. So like he said, yeah, you go to your website, that doesn't mean anything. It's the reviews that are going to really make or break a brand, but it's also going to be what your digital footprint is. So like me and Jacqui, we work with clients to identify and conceptualize the creative elements of what that social engagement is, whether it's comments, interaction, you know, it can be anything from your a higher end, high resolution photography, a video that is a frequent asked questions, or just, you know, just explaining what your brand is and what the interactive initiative is that you can get ahead of the questions that your customers are going to have.
Jacqui, there's a question on the chat box that brings up an interesting point. Somebody asks, Patrick's talking about responding to customer feedback, and every time somebody posts something, giving that feedback that the company cares and then talking about it. When you look at the media value of hiring somebody to respond to comments, how do you make sure that you're spending the appropriate funds? Because hiring somebody to respond to that comment or doing it yourself has a opportunity cost value, a monetary value, a value of somebody's time, and oftentimes those dollars can come from the advertising budget itself. what types of ways can you determine the value that comes from having somebody responding to comments, whether it be on Facebook, Better Business Bureau, Yelp, what have you?
Right. So yeah, great question. I think that plays into a lot of what Nick and Heather all just went through, which was really controlling the narrative, being prepared, and authenticity, as Patrick was referring to. And scalability, right? What is that scale where you have someone to do that? And in today's day and age, depending on your service, if you have a large digital footprint, if your audience is there, you need to be prepared. It is the way people communicate. They are few, but they are mighty, and they need to be addressed, and people do pay attention to them. So be prepared to be able to focus on it if you're putting yourself out there.
So Nick, I was thinking about you, and obviously the business that you provide to business customers, very different than what we focused on of Patrick selling to a consumer, B2C versus B2B. And I know through our interactions that, Nick, you rely on networking, you rely on a lot of referrals. How do you take a startup that might be watching our conversation today and give them advice on how to really take the networking aspect and the referral aspect, especially when the job that you're doing for these folks has a subjective nature to were they happy or not happy, and turning those folks that you've done business for into people that can help you get and acquire new business? Nick, you're on mute.
About that, there we go. I think the first step is really understanding yourself and what you naturally are good at. I authentically love networking, but in a manner of building experiences with people that are very meaningful. So I just don't go to big mixers where everyone's having a cocktail, because you really don't get a chance to have really good, meaningful conversation. You're just a person with 1,000 other people. I love very small, intimate networking events where we'll reach out to certain people, connect certain people with others. Maybe we'll do a small dinner. Right now we go in my backyard. We try different wines, just some type of experience that brings people together. When you do that, you're really building relationships with other people. And when they understand what your offering is, they're a refer. But I'll say this, you have to give first. So if you're doing any type of networking, do not ever expect you show up or you do these events and business is going to come to you. That's not how it works. What you have to do is give first. Find ways where you can help others. That's going to keep them top of mind. This does not mean you have to find business for them. You just have to help them solve a problem. Introduce them to an executive assistant, connect them with a marketing or PR company that you like, that you want to put in your network. So just be a connector in those early stages. That's probably the best advice on networking that I could give.
Nick, you're getting great marks in the chat box from the give first mentality. There's a question in here on that networking aspect, and I'm going to go to Heather because I know that your company does a lot with helping companies with events. And I'm going to ask each of you, obviously the elephant that we wish wasn't in the room is the COVID and quarantine situation we're dealing with. So let's talk about both parts, a world where we're able to have events and network in person, and then what we're doing in the interim as we're not able to have events and in person. Heather, how are you helping companies to take advantage of both virtual and live events, and what types of preparation, to Nick's point, preparation is always key in anything that you're doing. What type of preparation should somebody who's starting up and experiencing these events or networking opportunities for the first time take into account?
Right. So I too love that. And like I said before, people over profits, right? Take care of those that are in your group or maybe aren't in your group and that you want to expand out. So we do a number of events, but our type of events are more so in brand leveraging. so to speak. So to raise a brand up. So for instance, I work with a lot of like hospitality restaurant groups. So before they would open a new location, we would usually bring in press early to preview the menu, I should say, interview the top chefs, the owners, whatever the case may be, but we always have some type of take home, right? We want to take care of our press that are going to be taking care of our clients. So it would be a cheese wine pairing bag to take home with them, or something to create a conversation, something that is surrounding that brand, whether it be a restaurant or not, it can be anything else, but that is a disruptor. So they go home, they think about it, it brings out conversation, they show it to their friends, their family, and it goes back to that brand recognition, right? So in a time now that we can't be face-to-face, we can do different elements. So there's a version called Hub and Spoke, where it's kind of like you have your main group, your main corporate event, and then you can really trickle off of that in small groups at home. So we're all kind of with our own tribes, our own, maybe we're still meeting up with family or our best friends or coworkers in small groups that we feel comfortable with. So we're kind of consistently starting to branch out, but we may mail items to them to review, or create an experience prior to even getting to that point of needing to be on location someplace, that you are still being consistent with your story, with your product, with whatever your client's messaging may be from a PR side of it. We want to make sure that that the customer, consumer, reporter, whomever is experiencing your brand is doing so in a different manner, but that's still consistent with what would have been if we were in person.
The interesting part about the in-person and referrals is a lot of these things, big businesses spend lots of money on booth space. They spend lots of money sending people to travel to events. Event strategy and buying tickets, buying tables, buying tchotchkes, all kinds of those things can be part of somebody's ad or marketing budget, whether it be going to a Oktoberfest in a community and having a table and trying to meet people, or going to a healthcare conference and making sure your booth is set up so that your salespeople could have face-to-face live interactions. I'm going to bring it back to Jacqui because I keep bringing the spend questions to her. How do you evaluate the spend of referral groups, events, purchases that lead to gifts that you're providing to people as prompts that bring in sales leads? How do you evaluate that in the same way that you brought up earlier of tracking conversions and clicks and those types of things? Because these are definitely offline media that have an impact on businesses for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that as part of the marketing, the journey itself, and marketing playing a point at so many points in the journey, that's just another example, right? So with anything else you're doing in marketing, I think you need to assign a value. That's how we do it, or we assign a percentage of the spend to that event or that category of sales or trade shows and that sort of thing. So what is the value? What is the worth that those elements have in your bottom line? Attach that, and then you can put the ROI against it.
Here we have a message in the chat room from Justin. He says, great point, Heather. Nothing more impactful these days than getting something in the mail. I'm going to expand on that because direct mail absolutely still works. Patrick probably has experience with canvassing, direct mail, all of those types of things. But I challenge Justin in the sense of, from a B2B standpoint, I know some offices completely shut down. People have changed their patterns. So I'm going to make the question as it relates to how people have changed their patterns over the past 6 months. I'll have the same question for everybody. What have you changed in your business approach to working with your clients based off of how people have changed their patterns? Let's start with Patrick.
So, for us, it's, we're in a tough business because we go in people's homes, right? So, you know, that's been challenging for us. Like, right, there's some feedback there. I don't know if it's you. Anyway, you hear that?
You're good. Keep going.
Okay. So for us, you know, some of the big changes we had to look back. I mean, you know, when you talk about COVID and when it hit, you know, I mean, you're thinking about us. I mean, every single day, I mean, our company runs anywhere between 500 and 1,000 estimates every single month. So that means we're going into 500 to 1,000 people's homes to give the estimates. That doesn't include going back and saying, hey, we need to do a project inspection, a site inspection, or an installation. So how do you navigate through these things, right? So how do you deal with that stuff? So for us, it was an instantaneous switch to try to create a virtual experience in a home improvement process, which is challenging, right? But, you know, for us, I think it was about, you know, at first we tried to be the authority, right? But then we started to determine that everybody had different comfort levels as it pertains to this, right? So when we started looking at our customer bases, what we really did was, or customers, what we really did is ask what their experience needed to be, right? So we became kind of catch-all. We wanted to be, you know, to a degree authority in this, like we know this will work, we know we can do these things, and what's your comfort level over here on these things? Right. So what we did is we kind of created like a probing system or a Q&A system. Like, I'll give you an example. We say we're going to offer a virtual estimate. We're going to offer an on-site estimate. Right. 80% of the people would take the virtual estimate. But part of the virtual estimate is for us to come out and do a site inspection, because we don't, in good conscience, can't estimate your products over a Zoom. We can talk you over the Zoom. We can present the pricing to you over the Zoom, but we still got to come to the house. So we would ask homeowners to be there when we came. So we'd schedule you for a full virtual estimate. We want you to be there when we come, just so somebody's on the property, because we're going to be on your property. But we don't need any interaction with you. Well, when we come out to the house, what do we find? 80% of those people converted to a conventional estimate right there on the spot. They had a Zoom meeting for 2 days later. But once the person came out and they say, oh, here's a human, I'm a human, I feel safe with this interaction, we can sit on the back porch. Why don't you show me what you have? I'd like to see some of your products. So majority of the people took the virtual estimate. 80% of those people converted to a traditional estimate, so we went out there. So I kind of like correlate that to everything that we're doing, right? Like, employees are uncomfortable coming to the office. But then every once in a while we have to go into the office, maybe grab something, and then you see another employee, and instantaneously you become comfortable. You stand there, you chat with them, you talk it all up, and you leave and you feel good about it. So I guess, you know, that's a lot, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, when you think about these experiences in today and how you have to alter and pivot in business, I think that you have to make changes based on perceptions, but then the reality of that is that the reality is, you know, people are very emotional, and you might create a process, and then when you go to implement that process, something might change in it. I know that's a lot, kind of a big ball I throw you guys, sorry about that. But it was that's really what we went through, is we created a process, and then we thought it was good, and then we started to operate, but then you learn new things every step of the way. So, you know, we altered that process, and we just altered it on behavior. I guess the point is, you know, when it comes to process change or navigating through things like this, trying to build a networking event, you just do what you can. You know, you said bring a physical world. We did this thing where we wanted to bring a physical world to remote employees, so we created a scrapbook. And we actually had our office manager, this was a really heavy lift on her. She would send the scrapbook to your house. You would go in there, write your own thoughts on it, look at what everybody else put in the scrapbook, put it back in the box. She would also FedEx you the label. You put it in there, you send it to the next person. So you think, what a novel idea. 50% of people didn't want the scrapbook. Right? So great idea, bring it to life. 50% of the people couldn't wait to get something in the mail. They couldn't wait for the scrapbook. 50% of the people said, I don't want the scrapbook. So this normal, like what we're still navigating through, I guess anybody that thinks they have a solid answer, I mean, you just, you know, you put your best foot forward in it, and then, you know, you see where your next step has to be.
Well, I'll give you the solid answer. If you listen to country music at all, Florida Georgia Line has a song called People Are Different. And it's the best line out there that you're making that point. 50% of the people loved it, 50% of the people hated it. And our job as business professionals is to make decisions based off of how we can get the biggest return from the biggest audience. And so we have to make decisions based off of rules rather than exceptions to the rule. And your point about people coming to the office, we see the exact same thing here. Nick, on a B2B sale with Patrick's message that people are different and you have no idea how they're going to react and they change their reaction on the spot, how are you dealing with B2B sale and customers and interactions?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so our sales for this entire year have been over Zoom calls or phone calls. Actually, I think that not even Zoom calls, just phone calls, because people are like zoomed out. They don't even want to be on video. So you have to be able to pivot real quick. But again, this is where it's so important, where as a startup, you know who you are as a leader if you're the one selling, which in a startup mode, you're probably selling. You got to know the culture, your mission, your values. Hold true to those. Just hold true to what is most important to you. And if you're a startup, the best thing you could do is get those values down, get a mission down that you agree on. If you have a mantra, create a mantra. I love mantras to build up. And when you are selling or you're out there, when you do have to pivot, because things will not go your way, I promise you that. you pivot, but stay true to the mission, the values that you put in place, and you're going to be okay. And it's okay to say no.
Well, hey, I got a feedback here from Crystal R. Loves Florida Georgia Line, so I'm glad I brought that song up. We're coming to the end of our time here, but I want to do one thing that's really important to me. This was growth through advertising, and as everybody who was with us at the beginning knows, we changed it to growth through attention getting. I'm going to give each one of the panelists the opportunity to advertise their own business, 1 minute or less. Talk to us, grab our attention about if somebody in the community that's watching this conversation today needs your business, your help, your connection, why should they contact you? We're going to start with Heather, 1 minute or less. We're going to go down the line immediately after Heather to Jacqui, back to Nick, and Patrick will close us out.
No pressure to start off. First of all, just say I need to give advice to anybody who is in a startup and or has to pivot their business model, right? Our favorite word. Like even in my industry, I had to pivot because initially with COVID, our work slowed and marketing budgets were the first to go, right? Everyone then started to try and do it themselves. If they had to cut that department of their company. So my advice to them, and then also if you want to call us and bring us back, is that invest in yourself. Just keep yourself consistently ahead of the curve, whether it's digitally or in certifications. Just keep learning. Even YouTube, look up, how to do the best that you can. And then once you reach that point, then you can bring in people like Jacqui, myself, or any other agency that can assist with that and be a support system to the foundation that you've already built. So I would say call us, professionals like myself, my company specifically, if you need, is that you need a brand strategy. So we are there to help craft the best story for you to tell. So whatever that visibility may be.
Jacqui, we're up. You're up.
Thank you, Heather. Yes, when you get to that point, if you are ready to enlist some help, more brains than one are often very helpful. RP3 for anything from strategic thinking through this especially pivotal moment with COVID, with a lot of research. A lot of research helps. That's hard to come by. We can do that all the way to awesome creative and back down to any small digital test you might think you want to get your foot wet with.
Let's hear from Nick. Nick, you're on mute.
You think I'd learn technology by now, right? I would say this, the best offer I can make to anyone on here is the following as a startup. If you hit me up on LinkedIn, Nick Damoulakis at Orases, and if you're interested to have a conversation on leadership, entrepreneurship, I'll be more than happy to give you a hand. That's probably the best I can do for anybody on here. Again, the name of our company is Orases. We develop custom software, but my true passion is growing people. And if you're interested in that, hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll help you out.
Patrick, give us 1 minute and then I'll close it out and bring it back to Corey.
Yeah, I want to give everybody a book. We didn't really talk about that, but there's a book out there. It's written by a gentleman. His name's Scott Bedbury. Scott Bedbury wrote a book. It's called A New Brand World. Scott Bedbury was the CMO for Nike, and then he went on to be the CMO for Starbucks, and then the CBO, which is the Chief Brand Officer. He has 2 quotes in the book that I love that are relevant to my pitch here. He said, people will barely remember your name. I'm sorry, they won't remember their name. They'll barely remember what you sold them. They'll only remember how you made them feel. And I think that seems lofty, but you think about that restaurant, like, oh yeah, what was the name of that restaurant? What did we eat? Oh, but it was fantastic. I don't remember what I had. I don't remember the name. I know the place was fantastic. I'm gonna help you find it because I know where it is. He also said brand in and of itself is the emotional experience. When somebody interacts with your company, product, or employee. That's what a brand is. The emotional experience when somebody interacts with your company, product, or employee. For us, we sell roofing, not very sexy. The only thing I want to make people say is if you need a roof, our whole thing is to make that feel easy. I don't need you to remember my name. All I need you to remember is, man, that was so easy. Like we called them, they did it. It was a non-event. So easy. And that's redefining the expectation of what's possible from a home improvement company, which is our vision statement.
Perfect. We're going to leave it there. When you think about redefining the expectation of the future, like Patrick is doing for the home improvement industry, growth through advertising, we changed the name to growth through attention getting. I hope we grabbed your attention today. If you want to reach out to any of the panelists on LinkedIn, they're all free to connect. And we are proud of everybody who joined us today because at the nature of our country and capitalism is starting up businesses, creating jobs, making commerce happen. We applaud you for coming today. We applaud you for starting a business. We applaud you for investing in yourself. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Corey.
Thank you, Jeffrey, Heather, Jackie, Nick, and Patrick for bringing your perspectives to this fantastic discussion on growth through attention grabbing. We appreciate your time and support of the DC Startup Week community. Please feel free to reach out to them after the event, like Jeffrey said. We got some other great sessions coming up right here at the 1 o'clock hour. We've got strategy on how to build a better team. We've got build products that matter, fireside chat with product expert Ben Foster, who just came out with the book. So that's going to be a great conversation. Tonight, we've got our happy hour, as you saw at the beginning of the chat, happy hour at 5:30. We'd love to see you guys there. And then another quick thing at 2 p.m. Tomorrow, we've got our culminating event, our pitch competition. We've got the 5 finalists from our pitch on Monday who are going to battle it out for the first prize. So we'd love to see you guys at future sessions and see you later. Thank you.